drum level. Now this stuff obviously is pretty technically, like you can't just roll out of bed in the morning and learn and to play this stuff. So did you already have this technique? Or
I started at 13 playing the acoustic guitar. And probably a year later I bought an electric guitar, and I got into like grunge music, rock and roll, Nirvana, Pro Jam, stuff like that. And I just kind of played for fun. I never really learned theory, so I just played bar chord, not even bar, power chords is what it's called. And so it was something just kind of like a hobby. I loved it, but it's not like I took it seriously.
I think it's hilarious that we're now all at this age group where any person, no matter what musical style they play, if they're a guitar player, you ask them what they first played, and they'll tell you, oh, well, it was Metallica's Black Album.
Yeah.
Whatever. Even it's like a hardcore jazz person came in the other day and said, oh, yeah, well, of course I had all the Steve Vai records.
Oh, I know so many guitarists that, say the same thing. Olli started as a metal guy, too.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Rock and roll.
It's weird. It's just, I guess that's what classic rock now, right?
Yeah.
So you were doing, when acoustic, it was just your standard flat pick type?
Yeah, I didn't have it. It was Brazil. I didn't have any money to buy picks, so I just kind of made them out of plastic. But it was just, strumming. It took me a while to figure out how to strum up. So for the first like 6 months, it was just this, And then one day, I think I was jamming. I was just playing open strings and playing. And I got the upstroke, and I'm like, whoa, I just did it. That's crazy. I was able to, So it was very slow at first. I think I was 19, and I was in Italy. And a family member of mine, we were having dinner, and an uncle of mine was playing Brazilian music on the radio. And it was like, he had like 4 CDs, and they were all of this one guy that would just play at a bar in Rio de Janeiro with one Godin guitar, right? A Godin guitar. Mm-hmm. And it was just a solo, like, little concert, right? And he made albums out of this thing. And it's just this guy playing medleys of bossa nova, MPB, samba, And I remember really liking it, the voice, the guitar playing. And so I took some of these CDs home, and I started seeing the titles, and I started learning the tunes. And
so you were how old at this point?
Probably 19.
Okay.
And so, it was a lot of going on the internet. There was internet at that point. so I could find the chords to these songs. And I was trying to learn these different shapes and chords, and I was trying to play fingerstyle at that point. And watching a lot of YouTube videos and seeing how people kind of play, what they were doing with their right hand.
So you didn't have any of the fingerstyle chops yet, even at,
no,
at 19?
No, none of those chops. I was kind of letting go of the pick, and I was just trying to play like the Brazilian style. And so from there, I learned, you know, everything was kind of more or less. I learned the bossa nova rhythm. A little after, I started learning sambas. And then I think I mentioned earlier, over dinner one night, one of these songs that I learned from the CD was called Sampa, which is short for the city of São Paulo. And I said, oh yeah, I've been trying to learn that tune, and it's a samba. And my dad said, no, it's not a samba. It's a chorinho, it's a choro. And I'm like, what? Chorinho? And I'm like, okay. And so that night I went home and I started looking up chorinho on at the time it was like LimeWire, which is like a Napster.
Oh, I
chorinho,
remember.
yeah. And then you get this list of chorinho MP3. A lot of them didn't have titles or anything. And so I just downloaded it all I could, and I just fell in love. I'm like, this is amazing. This is what I want to play. And then I noticed that a lot of the notes, I was trying to learn the guitar parts, but they had all these bass lines which I was trying to learn, but they just kept going lower than I could on my guitar. And then someone told me, oh, it's because it's a 7-string. Like, oh. And then a year later, probably, I was able to find someone selling me a 7-string.
So the instruments, are they made specifically for choro players, or is this just a 7-string classical guitar or something?
I mean, it's pretty much for choro players. Even though this is, when I was talking about, there's a Pixinguinha, there's a Ernesto Nazareth, there's Chiquinho Gonzaga, very noteworthy pianist, one of the, if not the originator of the genre, right? But in the 70s and 80s, there was a guitarist that came along. He was a young kid at the time, and his name was Rafael Rabelo. And I definitely recommend. He is probably one of the biggest. Him and Gino Sete Cordas are the biggest inspirations of the 7-string guitar. And he basically proved that it's an instrument that's not just for accompaniment. He started out as an accompanist in choro bands, right? And then he quickly started playing the 7-string nylon, because before that they were pretty much all steel string guitars. You had a cello C string, and you had steel, and then you had 2 trebles in the bottom, 2 nylon trebles, yeah. And then he came along and just and just had it tuned exactly like a normal guitar, not tuned, but had the strings of like nylon strings. And he was playing as a soloist.
Why did he do that, or what was he?
Because he played a 7-string steel guitar, but he also learned classical guitar. Yeah, he had teachers teaching him classical music, and so he started playing those tunes on the 7-string guitars. Like, there's no reason not to. You can play every single classical piece on the 7-string guitar. And he's like, well, I can even use this bass string. I can tune it to B to make it simpler, or I can tune it to A, or I can tune it to keep it in C. There's all this, So he started making it into a soloist instrument as well, and to the point where he recorded albums where his guitar is the solo instrument with the bass player accompanying, with the pandero, with the full band, like a choro band even, He actually recorded an album with Gino Sete Cordas, so it was kind of like the old generation and the new generation, and they recorded together, and it was an awesome album. And
he had more of the, in other words, a technical style that was a blend of classical guitar and the bass accompaniment thing.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. He had, everything figured out when it came to the bass line. And then he had extreme virtuosity in playing, fingerstyle, playing classical pieces.
Yep.
So
can you just lean a little bit that way and try that again?
This way?
Yeah, just for more light on the right hand.
Yeah.
Do the bass thing again.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of thumb only for some of those notes.
From some of those notes,
so all downstrokes on the thumb, essentially.
They're all downstrokes, and you have also some assistance with the indicator finger.
For the bass part.
For the bass part, yeah, you can go up a line. For example, okay, here I'm planning on going back down. The faster you play, the more you're gonna need this guy. So it's if you slow that down, you can maybe see what I'm doing there. But
when you have a pair of strings you need to get across, and
yeah.
so the index is the upper string?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just kind of helps. For example, something like this. For example.
Isn't there in 1 to 0, there's a moment in there where you do that descending fours pattern?
Oh yeah, here. This?
Yeah, well, there's that repeated thing, right? But I think there's a da 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 thing when you and Olli both do that. And that's it.
Yeah.
And are you thinking? Did you work out those fingering patterns at one point, or are you just kind of
something
feeling your way through that?
It kind of is through a lot of banging head against the wall. It's those things that finally come to you naturally. This is, I never really had a teacher teach me about choro guitar and 7-string. So it was one of those things that, over time and kind of struggling, you finally start getting these things. And, when I started teaching a student about, this technique, that's when I started putting these thoughts together and understanding what I was doing, because I just did it naturally. And I had trouble explaining to him what I was doing.
So was there a moment early on where you tried to do like a picado 2-finger type thing for the bass lines, and that didn't work? Or how did you get to the all thumb thing? I
pretty much knew from watching videos of, not instructional videos, just people playing, right? That's what you did. You play with the thumb. But in the beginning, you think that you should do everything with the thumb. So everything, This is actually how a complete beginner would play the scale. Would be. And you get a clean sound, a snappy and clean sound from each note. Problem is, it really slows you down. So let's say something like this. Like I'm killing myself doing this, right? And so you learn about the legato. That adds a lot of speed and makes it a little more fluid too.
And with that was all. Was there index in there also on that?
No, I was showing that at the beginning. I thought everything was thumb, and then you realize that it's easier for the treble strings,
right.
Even for the G. Sometimes not the 3 treble strings, but just the E and the B. It's just easier to use these 2 fingers, middle and index finger. Right. So you can. Oh, here.
Yeah.
So something like this is more convenient, like a C scale. And then, so I'm doing these 3 treble strings, and then from the D on, the bass strings, I switch to bass. And vice versa. And the moment I switch, I'm using the index finger. You can just practice this, for example.
So the dividing line is almost like between wound and unwound strings or something?
Yeah, exactly. That's usually the dividing line. Sometimes you might play also the G string with the thumb. It depends on the situation. Sometimes you just catch yourself being better prepared. How do I put this? There are moments where it just makes more sense to continue playing it with the thumb, even the treble strings, Yeah. And some moments you might catch yourself. You might find it better to use the finger plucking to play the bass line. So so sometimes it's just better to do that because it depends on the circumstance you're in. Right. But as a rule of thumb, that's what I'd like to do. Yeah. Get it?
Rule of thumb.
Yeah.